Welcome back, and now let's take a look at the red news, blue news from the ongoing protests in Ferguson. As you know, Fox News is red news, and just this week, all week in fact, not a day went by without complaints on Fox about this man, Al Sharpton. He is the president of the National Action Network, but he doubles as a blue news anchor, the 6 p.m. anchor on MSNBC, and he flew to Ferguson this week to support the Brown family and to anchor his show there. He has dual roles, and he's back today holding a rally this afternoon, which MSNBC is going to have live coverage of. Now, Sharpton's fans say he's a civil rights leader, but his detractors, well, they wish he would just go away.
Regarding Al Sharpton, how about for once he just stays out of it? You know, why do we need him to condemn it or say go for it? Well, just stay out. His presence alone.
That's like asking a rabid dog to stay away from hamburger. It ain't going to happen.
Rabid dog? Come on, Beckel. Well, here's the media question here about Sharpton. He's always been an activist, so should he also anchor a show? Let me ask Mark Lamont Hill, a Huffington Post Live host and a CNN commentator, and Crystal Wright, editor of the blog conservativeblackchick.com. Crystal, do you think it's appropriate that Al Sharpton has this platform every night on MSNBC?
No, I think Al Sharpton, I don't even consider Al Sharpton an activist. I consider him more of an instigator of race wars and racial tensions in America. He's been doing this for the last 30-plus years. He did it with Tawana Brawley way back in the 80s. This is what he does. But the crazy thing about it is MSNBC has now given him a show, and he tries to, you know, come off as an objective journalist, and he's anything but. As you mentioned, Brian.
You think he tries to come off as a journalist? I don't think he would say he's a journalist.
Well, why should he have a show? Oh, I don't think he should be called a journalist. I don't think he should be called a civil rights advocate. He hasn't advocated for peace and justice in over 3 decades, Brian.
A couple things here. First, Al Sharpton is, whether we like him or not, and I happen to like him, but whether we like him or not, he's certainly an activist. That's what he does. Any definition of activist he fits, whether you like his level or type of activism, is a different conversation. Al Sharpton would not also argue that he is an objective journalist. I don't think it's unfair to say that he is somehow failing to live up to a standard of journalism. Al Sharpton is a commentator. Al Sharpton is no different than Sean Hannity. He's no different than Glenn Beck was. He's no different than many pundits who have TV shows.
Yeah, this is the brave new world we live in, where cable news shows are sometimes hosted by people who are involved in the stories they're covering. But I understand why that makes people uncomfortable, Mark.
I don't think anyone in America thinks that Al Sharpton is trying to toe the line here, that he's trying to play the middle. There's not a person in America who doesn't think that Al Sharpton leans left and deals with issues of race. And I think at times that work is necessary, because when you talk about Trayvon Martin, that story took months before it hit the national scene, and it only hit the national scene because of activists, because of people who wanted to put a spotlight on it.
Yeah, some journalists were covering it before Al Sharpton arrived, even some here at CNN. But Sharpton's presence in Florida for the Trayvon Martin case did put a national spotlight on it. And by the way, MSNBC, I talked to a person there who said, in some cases, he has brought more attention to issues that we should be covering. For example, voting rights issues. Let me put up a quick statement from the president of MSNBC, Phil Griffin. When I reached out for comment, he said, Al Sharpton is both president of the National Action Network and a host on MSNBC. We've always been transparent about the dual roles and his work outside of MSNBC.
Seems reasonable.
Well, you don't think... Well, Sean Hannity is not professing to be some kind of activist. And you are right, Mark. Journalism today is very much about opinion, and Al Sharpton certainly has a lot of opinion, but it's not helpful when he jumps the gun like he did in Trayvon Martin's case. You all talk about putting a spotlight on Trayvon Martin's death.
Media images are so important here, and it strikes me that there's a difference sometimes what we see in traditional media, like in cable news, and what we see in social media. There was this real uprising of posts and pictures on Twitter under the hashtag #IfTheyGunnedMeDown. Mark, tell me what that was all about.
The If They Gunned Me Down hashtag and campaign was really something that organically grew out of social media, and I thought it was powerful. And it was speaking back to the way that black victims are often represented in cases like this. With Trayvon Martin, some people were desperate to put Trayvon on a horse. Others were desperate to make him look like a thug. And oftentimes, the way that we're represented in those images shapes how the public responds to us and even how cases are investigated. So many people in social media, particularly young black men and women, show 2 different images on the screen, one of them looking dignified and respectable, others glamorous-looking ways that the media might turn an eye toward. And it really showed the disparity in how images can represent, but it also spoke to the very real, chilling possibility that many young black men and women could be gunned down on the street. The fact that we're having a conversation of how we'd be represented if they gunned us down speaks to a very, very stark reality in a nation's
Crystal, did you feel the same way Mark did when you saw this movement online?
Yes, and I agree with Mark. I think that as a black woman and Mark, a black man, we were younger once. I don't want to speak for Mark.
I'm still young.
And right, me too. But you know, and I know I have two brothers, and I know from their experiences when they were driving as teenagers at night in the South, being afraid of being pulled over by police officers, my parents warning them that when they were out at parties and urban environments to behave a certain way when a police officer approached them. So look, this is real, and Mark is right. There are peaceful protests going on in Ferguson. I have a problem with the militarization of the police and the message that sends, how police feel about black Americans. Sure, I guess at the end of the day, I think we all should be able to have the kind of conversation Mark and I are having, and we're having with you, Brian, and we need to diffuse the racial tensions. And as I believe Michael Brown's mother said, guys, stop the violence. My son is dead tragically. He was about to go to college. She wants, you know, some kind of conclusion to this awful tragedy, as we all do. And at the end of the day, I don't think it's helpful when we rush to judgment, whether it's Trayvon Martin, whether it's Michael Brown. It doesn't really help any of us at the end of the day.
I'm glad you brought up the heavy-handed nature of the police response. And I think in many ways, photos from Twitter and Facebook are what led the national media to pay attention to that. And I think we need both. And we need anchors telling people, for example, on air that non-lethal force was used. But we also need to see the photos of what happens when non-lethal force is used. Yep. We need to see the bloody photos that we saw from people who were hit by those rubber bullets. So I think it's important we see both versions of that.
Yeah. I think my only concern is that, you know, sometimes we preach calm, and even the president over the last few days has preached calm, both in his statement from the White House and also in the brief presser he gave from Martha's Vineyard. And my concern with that is that sends a message that if we just remain calm and allow due process to take its course, everything will happen the way it's supposed to. But the truth is, if we remain calm, if we don't put a spotlight on this, if we don't create the media spectacle, and quite honestly, sometimes if we don't have demonstrative protests, not violence, but demonstrative protests, then nothing ever happens. In fact, I'm not sure. I mean, Crystal mentioned Chicago. Killings happen every single weekend. I'm in Chicago, and quite frankly, I've been there with Al Sharpton several times protesting black-on-black violence. It doesn't make the headlines. It's not a sexy enough story. It's only sexy if somebody's dead from a white cop or someone's caught on tape. We may be using spectacle in different terms. When I say spectacle, I mean in a more technical term of actually having a huge media attraction drawn to it.
Something to cover.
Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying, because that's what does it. You know, roaches do whatever they want in your house until you flick the light on. I'm talking about flicking a light on so that people can respond. Yeah. That's what these marches are. That's what these sit-ins are. If we have a crawl on the screen saying black kid killed by cop, nothing happens. It's only when we have a big demonstration, what I'm calling a spectacle, that we get the kind of results we desire.
Never heard that roach line before. I like it. I think we'll end right there. Mark Lamont Hill and Crystal Wright, thank you both for joining me.
Pleasure.
Thanks.